Mark Padun, aka the Ukrainian ultimatum, aka the pious Padun, aka oh my god, did he just do Sepp Kuss dirty like that, has not been selected in Bahrain-Victorious Tour de France squad despite 2 wins in the last 2 stages of the Critérium du Dauphiné, the main tune-up race for the Tour de France, in dominating fashion in the mountains. Here is the Bahrain-Victorious Tour de France squad: Haig, Bilbao, Colbrelli, Halle, Moritz, Poles, Turns, Fred, Wright. The omission of Padun was such an obvious sort of point, and you can see it in the replies to their tweet, that they addressed it within the body of their article, expanding on the team selection. But first, let's take a look at what Padun did in the Critérium du Dauphiné, what he said afterwards, how good really were his results, and then talk about if there's any rationale for not taking him to the Tour de France if you are Bahrain-Victorious. But just as a reminder, Stage 7, Critérium du Dauphiné, finishing on the plan, 17 Ks, 7.5%, a proper mountaintop finish, very similar to Stage 18 of this year's Tour de France, finishing on Louvre-des-Danes, although the plan is a bit longer, goes a bit higher, above 2,000 meters. Anyway, Stage 7, he's in the GC group. Just to remind you, he's in the GC group with Mas, Porte, Thomas, Sepp Kuss, Miguel Angel Lopez, etc. He attacks with Porte, following Porte's attack when Thomas told him to go up the road. He's in a group with Mas, Porte, and Sepp Kuss. Sepp Kuss won a stage of the Dauphiné last year, the last stage. And Padun he drops Porte and Mas, he accelerates away from them. And then he drops Sepp Kuss almost off the wheel after doing, I think, 75% of the work. Now, we don't know the exact watts per kilo of his Le Plan effort. He didn't beat Miguel Indurain's time from the 90s, but I think he set a pretty good time, maybe the second best ever, and he did that with the last 4.5 Ks of that climb being entirely on his own. And yes, even looking at it conservatively, it was over 6.1 watts per kilo for like 35 minutes or something like that. The watts per kilo is not important, it's more the results. Second stage, stage 8 that he won, finishing in Leggett. The main climb was the Col du Jouplan, which is 11 Ks, 11.5 Ks at 8.5%. It was the hardest climb of the Dauphiné this year. And Mark Padun was in the breakaway all day. He'd been sent there initially as maybe a satellite rider for Haig when Haig attacked. But then he got to the base of the climb, about a 2.5 minute lead on the GC group. He was in a group with Guillaume Martin, Patrick Konrad, and at the base of Col du Jouplan, Padun rode away from Martin and Patrick Konrad and did the entire climb on his own quicker than the peloton did Col du Jouplan. I think a 30-minute effort or just over 30-minute effort. He did it quicker, not just not losing too much time. He did the entire climb quicker on his own, then obviously had the descent, and he had enough of a buffer, over 3 minutes to the finish in Leggett, and he didn't even look tired at the finish. So forgetting the watts per kilo, we don't know the exact amounts. The point is, he is clearly good enough and showed at the Critérium du Dauphiné that if he brings that form to the Tour de France, he probably would have been the favourite for the polka dot jersey competition, and in stages like Louvre-des-Danes, even the Mont Ventoux stage, if he's lost enough time before that, if he's in a breakaway, he would be not impossible to beat, of course. There could be really strong riders who are going for stages, but if he brings those legs, he would have an extremely strong chance at a stage win. So that's why it didn't make sense that he was left out of the team. The performance director, Roger Hammond at Bahrain, said about Padun, there was a temptation to take Padun to the Tour after the Dauphiné. Well, yeah, of course, he won back-to-back mountain stage, was the best climber of the Dauphiné. The same goes for Gino Mader after his Giro and Tour de Suisse wins. However, these are young talents in the team with other goals this season, and their team has a responsibility to look at a longer-term project for these riders. Well, first, a few things about that don't make sense. First of all, Padun's done a couple of Grand Tours already. Second of all, I know he's young, but he's 24. He's not Juan Ayuso young. He's not 19 years old. He's actually been in the World Tour for a number of years now. I don't think there's any like, oh, we shouldn't overload this guy. We shouldn't take him to a Grand Tour too early. The Giro parcours can be harder than the Tour de France. So that doesn't make sense. Secondly, longer term project. Well, Padun is out of contract at the end of this year, so maybe they've already agreed terms after his Dauphiné, but again, that doesn't make sense. Surely you would want to get the wins that you can get out of him at the Tour if he's bringing that form, particularly if you're not going to be able to match the contract offer he gets. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe they don't want him to go to the Tour because they don't want him to win, so then he has a big contract offer. We're sort of seeing weird Lefevre-Bennett dynamics playing out, re-contract extensions, but I'm not sure that really makes sense. That sounds like cutting off your nose to spite your face. What Gino made, he already did the Giro, so that doesn't, he just did a Grand Tour. Padun didn't just do a Grand Tour, but also look who's replaced Mark Padun. It's Fred Wright, who's a couple of years younger than Mark Padun and definitely has not performed as well as Mark Padun. Now, just playing devil's advocate, I'm just trying to think why they might not have taken him and why they're taking a team with a combination hybrid riders like Turns Wright and then Haller and maybe Mohoric as well. And that's for Sonny Colbrelli. So the story of the Critérium du Dauphiné before Padun, before Sonny Colbrelli eventually got his win in Stage 3. Stages 1 and 2 was Bahrain's inability to chase the break back because they brought a really climbing heavy team. And it got to the point in later stages, I think Stage 5, even after Colbrelli's stage win, when they got over the top of the climb. They struggled to bring back the breaks in previous days. Paul Buitrago had been doing it, but they got over the final climb and Geraint Thomas attacked, and Jack Haig, who was going for GC, was pretty much, as you saw in Stage 8, in the form of his life. Jack Haig was having to close gaps on the flat and on a descent for Colbrelli. So maybe they're trying to avoid that happening by bringing another rider like Wright who can help Mohoric and Marco Haller. That's what maybe I'm thinking, because with Bennett not going, Colbrelli surely will be taking a proper tilt at the green jersey, although the placement of the intermediate sprints doesn't suit him too much, but he just won the Italian national champs on a hilly course. Sonny Colbrelli is climbing unbelievably well, even to the point where you look at something like Stage 7, might not be out of his sort of wheelhouse if he gets in a break with Mohoric and Dylan Turns. So maybe that's why they're bringing Fred Wright, more of a lead-out guy. He's contributed in the lead-out for Bauhaus. You would have seen at Tour de Hungary. That's my devil's advocate. But it still doesn't really make sense because performance-wise, and for someone like Haig, look at Dauphiné Stage 8, for example. Jack Haig was able to attack and had Thomas bringing him back over the top of Col de Jouplin, trying to gain time on Richie Porte. He was 30 seconds back. Lopez had set it up earlier, but originally the idea would have been for Padun to pull, or for Padun to be up the climb and Haig to attack across, and then for Padun to pull him. And there's a lot of these Tour de France climbs that are 6 to 8%, where a draft, a teammate is incredibly important at the speeds these guys do. So Padun, if they were able to rein him in, would have been an immense help for Jack Haig if he has similar legs and he's able to attack, because he'll need to attack likely, given that he'll probably lose time in the TT to Pogačar, Roglic and Geraint Thomas if he wants to go for a high GC placing. So, but Padun really could have been a trump card, plus going for polka dots, plus maybe being able to go for a stage win. So I'm really confused, and that's why I want to make this video, just to ask your opinion. Why do you think they're not bringing him? Is it because he wants to do the Olympic road race? But the problem with that is the descent finish, it'll be a bit tighter. His descending didn't look great. His sprint's probably not good. And from Bahrain-Victorious perspective, you'd be saying, no, you're going to the Tour. If you can do the Olympics after, but that's not in Bahrain-Victorious colours. So yeah, I'm confused. I don't really see a rational explanation for it. That's all from me on the Mark Padun story. Just thought it was unusual that the best climber of the Dauphiné wasn't being taken to the Tour. But tomorrow we'll probably have the Wangers Julian Alaphilippe going for the yellow jersey and GC at this year's Tour. And has Quickstep brought the team to help him? Answer no. But until then, ciao.